And then giving everyone their time to introduce themselves. So like, if you guys can introduce yourselves, and then da 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 da. And then you can ask us the first question, and you can just choose whoever you want to go first, and then we'll just bounce back and forth and give everyone a turn to speak on the question. And then I think that'll be a good way to just go 1, 2, 3, and then Q&A at the end.
Sounds good. Okay, so welcome everybody. I told Eliana that I was very excited that she had put me in what was clearly going to be the best of all possible breakout sessions. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I do have to say that this is paid for through California Department of Healthcare Services, and anything we say in this room may or may not necessarily reflect what the California Department of Healthcare Services thinks, but we're all fierce, opinionated people, and this should be an open and welcoming space for people to share diverse opinions. I hope that everybody is showing up with a sense of passion and honesty and curiosity. So I appreciate that for all of you. I think we agreed that we do have the chat box open. So if anybody has technical difficulties, we do have folks on the line, not me, but folks who can actually help you with those technical difficulties. Don't ask me, I will probably just make things worse. If, stuff comes up that feels hard or hurtful, we do invite you to retreat to the calm room. I think those of you who have been on the conference know how to get there. So you can always leave, and there will be somebody there who can help you sort through anything that comes up for you. Are there any questions about just the sort of format and technical parts? Good stuff. Do we want to do a quick round of introductions with sort of name, role, pronouns? Let's do that.
So this is being recorded now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sebastian Hernandez, and my gender pronouns are they, them, she, hers. I'm a multidisciplinary artist based in Los Angeles born native. And my work in regards of medium range from like performance art, which I'm predominantly known for, to photography, to video, to installation, dance. It's an amalgamation of a bunch of mediums coming together to create a multiplicity of things. I also organize a queer POC party called U Los Angeles back in the summer of 2019, I think. And yeah, I'm so excited to talk to everyone.
Do you want to pass it to someone?
Dicko, you can go next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dicko, and my pronouns are they, them, and I am an artist, basically doing a lot of just like visual stuff. I'm a photographer, I do a lot of video stuff, and yeah, so my work, I guess, is kind of hard to say because I think that the things I do actually go beyond just visual, and it's a lot of like critical thinking, and that's why it's just like in the way that I live and do everything, I guess. And yeah, so thank you for having me. And I'll pass it to BB.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is BB Discoteca. I am an artist from LA, and a lot of my art involves drag performance art. And I also co-produce a party called Send Nudes, which is a space for queer Asian Pacific Islander people to gather, enjoy some good drag, connect with their heritage, connect with their culture. And a lot of that is just, defining what it means for like us as queer, like Asian people to connect with our culture that, has sometimes been lost due to assimilation, colonialization. So we just try to provide that space for us to just have a good time and party and be ourselves. And I've been making art, or at least professionally doing drag now for 6 years, just around like Southern California, LA area mainly. And yeah, I've just been able to really cultivate a base down here. Love doing like, you know, very like energetic, colorful performances, but also somewhat, I always try to get some sort of like thought-provoking element up in there. So that's who I am. Thanks for having me on this panel, and I'll pass it off to Kumi.
Hi everyone, I'm Kumi James, or Kumi Iman James. I also go by Bebe as a DJ, and my pronouns are they and she. And I'm a DJ, a music producer, I'm an event producer too. I used to throw, well, pre-COVID, I was throwing a rave in the hood near Lamart, where I'm from, called Hood Rave, and that was really fun. And I also make film, and I'm a PhD student in media arts and practice at USC. I also consider myself like an organizer, basically, someone who brings people together and tries to create safe spaces, or at least tries, It's a really difficult thing to navigate in a society with so much violence. Including racism, transphobia, queerphobia. And so, yeah, those are things I think about a lot. I also think about how to be critical of capitalism and kind of how we're always forced to work and produce at all times, and how our work as artists is becoming commodified. Like, how do we break that down and also find ways to come together and create a culture outside of that? So thank y'all.
Do you want to pass it to someone else?
There's someone else on the panel. I think it's just.
I think it's the four of us. It's just us.
Okay.
So, Miranda.
Yeah, so I think I turn it back to you, Sebastian. I think you can ask the questions. You can invite people to go in the order that you decide, or you can, like I said, have them Rochambeau for it. We're hoping that people are going to keep it, relatively short, like about 10 minutes per panel. And we'd like to invite everybody to use I statements whenever possible.
Okay, cool. So very quickly, I guess, just to lighten up the mood, I suppose, I want everyone to know that we all basically kind of know each other. We're all in Los Angeles, so we're all queer, and we're all kind of like exchanging perhaps art ideas or synergy, perhaps. So feel free to be in that space with us, or for the panelists. And so the first question that we had, to kind of just get the juices going, in what ways have you seen and or experienced art, photography, videography, and music help BIPOC LGBTQ people heal from racism and homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia? Kumi, would you be able to break the ice with this one?
I can try.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a big question. So I also, in my history, I was a social worker, so maybe I have something in common with the people attending this conference. I used to work for a mental health organization in LA that housed homeless folks. And so like bringing together healing and an art practice is really important to me. I don't know if I know how to lighten the mood around this, because There's so much like
Just go in. Just go in.
because I think what I've struggled with in bringing people together is the amount of trauma that different people, people in our communities are experiencing as a result to the different violences around race, racial identity, gender identity, sexuality, also around being working class or growing up poor, all these things that come in. I think it could be very cathartic, like a way to let go of things as you like pursue art. And I think generally I wish like the arts were put more into everyone's daily practice, like every day, more funding to the arts, like in schools and things like that. So people can kind of find ways to express themselves and let go of some of this, process this trauma. But yeah, it's a heavy thing to navigate. But I think that for me, I made a film once. I'm a filmmaker, is like I mentioned, I think, where I kind of, it's called Archives of Healing. And I took clips of different things just off of my phone and social media that I found healing, like funny clips that were viral on TikTok. Or I think back then it was, what's that other one that like
Vine?
Doesn't exist anymore, Vine, yeah. So I was like getting Vine clips, getting clips of my friends and myself, like trying to sew something together, almost like a quilt that's a video that was nurturing for me. So I think finding creative ways like that and also just teaching everyone that they have creativity inside of themselves and they just need sometimes the time and space to practice. So yeah, hopefully that's something people are doing within these different institutions that people are a part of.
Yeah, I think so much of myself in some way as an artist. Like I feel like I'm so privileged because, and it shouldn't feel, I shouldn't feel like it's a privilege for me to be an artist because it was the only lane for me that's the only lane that I saw myself being able to be who I authentically could be. That was, I think, like a precursor to my trans identity and seeing myself that was the only place that I could see myself existing. So I agree with you in that I wish it wasn't like this, where like I feel that there's only a few of us, there's only a few artists that get the time to really experiment and create, because you really do need time sometimes to build a kind of sophisticated, I guess, art practice. So
I hear you. Yeah, like maybe it shouldn't be like certain people are the artists and then everyone else, doesn't get that opportunity to express themselves in that way. So
Dicko, would you
Yeah, I totally agree. This is like such a heavy question because I think that healing is such like a journey that for me, like I'm still doing it every day, and I think that sometimes I still wake up, like just like sometimes it gets hard to breathe. And like when we watch the news and see all these images that are like presented to us that are actually like, as artists, I think, well, not just artists, I would think that everybody is sensitive to it. But I think that for people who are artists, we perhaps feel it like so heavily as well, especially being, queer, trans, like just people of color, and just trying to, just follow this path that never really, like, so I think that to be artists, like society never really made it easy for us, at least in America. So for me, I can only speak for myself personally that I've healed with my art in ways where I basically just like find a moment where it makes my heart beat and my blood boil, and when I have those moments of inspirations and like just I'm creating something that I love, it makes me want to live longer. Like it just makes me want to wake up every day, like wake up another day and do that more. And hopefully as I do that, other people who are consuming my work can also feel those feelings and also want to live another day. And I think that that's how I feel about feeling like healing and art. And BB, do you have to? Yes.
And that's so beautiful. What everyone has been saying. And I think like before I even knew it, whether I knew it or not, me making art has always been about healing in some type of way. And it took me a minute to get to that point because I feel like a lot of what motivated my art in the past was anger. And and I think people could tell it by my performances. It's very like explosive sometimes. Even if it was like happy, I was like channeling some sort of anger just because of past stuff. But it was the moment where I was like, okay, yo, like this anger is like it's producing beautiful art and everything, but like I really need it to make sense for me and for it to be healing for me. And that's when I started like reconnecting the dots and I was like, yo, I'm getting this anger out and it's almost like alchemy sort of, it's like you're morphing this energy inside of you, which could come out as like more fire, more passion, more anger, but also it could come out very beautiful. And sometimes it's both or everything. So it's that like art for us is like so healing. And like what Dicko was saying, when people see you living your truth, when people see you in the moment, just fully in the present too, people want to be in the present with you. And it's just like such an amazing exchange when you're able to share your art and share that experience with someone else. So it's like this healing circle that starts to happen, even if it's just like, like how Kumi was saying too, with like the video, which I would really like to see. I have not seen that. I'm sure people that were like scrolling past and saw it were like, oh my gosh, like this is so amazing. And I really needed to see this. So it's always a healing experience, whether we know it or not, because we also never know like who is consuming our art, who is being exposed to our art. So there's always a healing moment, and yeah, I think that's just who we are as artists. It's just this ever long journey towards being better and recuperating after like so many hardships in the past.
Yeah. So much to ponder on, but like, yes, so I guess I wanted to express that I know each of you personally, but also I was gravitated towards you guys, or I saw you guys through your art. So like Dicko's art, like Dicko's photography, BB, your drag performances are just incredible to me. And that's what I gravitated towards. And I could see that you were really healing through some things with performance that I personally also saw myself doing, but in a different kind of, the way that the ideas spill out from our bodies are just, they look differently. Kumi, you also like just incredible DJ and thinker. And so I think I also gravitated towards you in that way. And so I think when we're just like letting the world see our art, it just really makes me feel like I'm not alone in this world and that we're all, I mean, and the more that we push ourselves out there, I feel like we're gonna be okay, kind of. And so a lot of my art personally also tries to synthesize for myself, how am I an individual in this world, but also how am I connected to queer people, but like the bigger scale is like how are queer people and communities connected to perhaps even the local, which is Los Angeles, and even beyond that, like globally, which is hard, like being here and trying to make art in Los Angeles when there's an influx of like people that come to Los Angeles for X, Y, and Z. And that's just kind of like what the life we live in. And so I try to use my art to synthesize these kinds of like power dynamics that I feel every day, which could be through these invitations to collaborate with people, or these movement gestures. that try to synthesize through the body and movement what it is that we are experiencing as individuals and humans. And anyways, that's it. That's all for me, Sebastian Hernandez. Moving on to question number 2. If we're all good to move on to question number 2. Yes, okay. How does art, or how do art, photography, videography, and music strengthen LGBTQ BIPOC communities? Dicko?
Sorry, Sebastian. Only because like look, I'm a Virgo moon, I'm sorry. We only have 10 minutes left. Would you want to combine the two? Because I also like the last question. Okay. Or I don't know. Because we kind of also answered that. I don't know.
Okay. Photography and music. Yeah, let's do it. Is it impact? Yes.
Oh, it goes till 2:30? Oh, thank you, Ruth. I thought it was till 2. Okay, my bad. Sorry, y'all.
So we're good on just doing the 2, or what? What do we?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sebastian. Go ahead, do your thing.
Hey, what time is it?
I was like, we're almost done. Okay.
So I guess if you guys can just speak on your specific medium, your favorite medium, main medium, I don't know, and how it strengthens our community. I'm wondering if Dicko.
Yeah, I can speak on it. I can go first. I think, well, beyond the obvious, I think, representation. I think that for sure is a thing. But I do want to mention how, like, in a way, my head just kind of went to mainstream representation, like commercials, movies, big screen, and all those things, and institutions, whatever. And I kind of want to come out and just say that I don't think that those should be the end all be all. I don't think that we should look to those spaces and those, because that still directly relates back to capitalism. Like, I don't think that that should validate us. However, I do think that, like, that is such a big part of, like, just being queer and BIPOC. It's like being here and being able to make work and just like about the celebration of us, and just to be loud and be out and sort of have our art be, known to people and for people to see that. And I think that that has values in it. And also I think about like club spaces, and how, although we don't live in, back in the day, we're in 2021 now, that those are not our only safe spaces to exist in our community, but I know that they once were. And I think that there is tremendous values in that too, in the way we celebrate and like share space and like dance. And like when we go and party together, like there is, like, it's so powerful. And I think that, and that like those parties, like, that's music, and that's us pulling looks, and that's us, just like enjoying each other's energy, which inspires even more art and photos and videos and all of that. And I think that, yeah, I'm just like going all over the place now, but yeah, all those things. And if somebody else can take the mic from me.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't.
I totally relate to that. And that's part of the why my last name is Discoteca too. I mean, it's the nightclub, and it's where queer people have been able to gather and like just freely be ourselves. And in terms of like bringing communities together, it's kind of like what I was saying when I introduced myself. Like, I co-produced this party called Send Nudes with Miss Shumai, which is another drag queen in LA. And that whole experience of creating this party centered around queer API people has been super healing for the community. And we know it's healing because they tell us. Like, after the first night that we had it, we had a runway portion you know, during the intermission of the drag show, where it was just like, you know, come as you are, come dressed up in your cultural regalia, whatever it is, just be yourself and let's get it. And people came through with the looks, like they were coming up in their traditional wear and stuff, but like queering it up. And that was like the night that I knew that this is like, it's nights like these that remind you like why we do the work that we do and why we create these parties. Because it's not just a party. It's like it goes back to the healing. It's not just a party. It's healing for us. It's healing for us to see each other do what we want to do and be happy with it, because we haven't been afforded that so much like prior in our lives. But it's just that we're able to, you know, we all have this kind of like common denominator or common factor where we've been through some shit and we're showing up to these different spaces with the understanding like, hey, we've all been through it, and let's, you know, dance it off, let's get it out of our system. And now it's like, okay, but now that we're, you know, get it all out, let it all out, what are we gonna do with that now that we have like the representation, or we're coming together? Yes, we're partying, but what are we doing the next morning after? You know, what actions are we gonna be participating in? And yeah, that's just something beautiful that I've been able to see throughout my life as a drag artist. Like I see the fundraisers for the girls, for let's get our titties done, you know, you know, for the fundraisers for FFS. You know, there's so many. I think there is like another fundraiser in the past where someone needed to meet bail. Like if there's one thing that we're gonna do as a community, as a drag community, is have a fundraiser show, you know. And that's just something beautiful that I've been able to see throughout my life.
Period. Kumi?
Yeah, I mean, those responses were so good. Yeah, and I think something BB said earlier struck me about like how performance and drag performance, but it could be other types of performance, it really like makes people be in the present with you, like be here right now with you. And I think that a lot of times with capitalism and like different ways our society works, it's like it's not really about just being in the present with each other. And I think that's like a really deep thing. It's more like, okay, you know, I'm anxious about what's to come, or you know, traumatized by the past. But I love that you know, as performance artists, you Sebastian and BB, y'all are working in that. And yeah, like BB was talking about kind of like mutual aid that's happening between queer people of color, these fundraisers and those ways of supporting each other. I was also gonna like show y'all, because like, sorry, I have like this sign, because I throw parties, you know, these signs that we make, like what you can or cannot do in the space. So it's like no racism, no sexism, no homophobia, no transphobia, no fat phobia, no xenophobia, no ableism, classism, no ageism, no hate. I was just thinking, let me show you guys, because this is kind of like part of the art that gets created as we're doing our nightlives, you know, throwing our spaces. But I also think it's like, it's a radical thing. Like nightlife has a potential to be a very radical thing, especially if you think about like the Stonewall rebellions in New York. Like these things came out of queer people at night coming together and fighting for their space. So the reason why I share this sign is because I think it's an example of basically what we do in these events, I think, is reimagine what community is. Like we make our own understanding, like this is what community is to us, and it's important, and it's kind of like refashioning or recreating the world like in our image. And I think that's a really powerful and important thing that sometimes can only happen at night, which is really interesting to me, you know, because of the ways our time is taken up in the daytime, by the ways that we have to work and, you know, other issues. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what's said, and I was just thinking about it as reimagining community. What else was the question? How do our, yeah, I think that's the main thing I want to think about, is like mainly what I just said. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to also speak on how performance or just art ideas and putting them forward and putting them out in the world, for me personally, are in my mind when I'm thinking of doing them, they're very intense and very, I guess, radical and very vulnerable. So there's these very risky things that I feel like I'm doing, and sometimes they're not even really maybe sometimes they're not like what like the final end product people see, like the public. Sometimes it's like in the email and in the uh, delegating of certain ideas about money and how I'm supposed to be treated and what is supposed to happen. Like there's these like copyright things and like contracts, and there's those things that are also really important part of the work for me that I don't think a lot of people see sometimes. So there's that part, which I feel like is the BTS, but still very much so a core of the work that I do as an artist. But there's also the public, they see the final product, which is like sometimes for a long time it has been like just the performance part of my body being present. And so I think that seeing somebody like myself, I don't know, I do the art that I do in Los Angeles because I feel there hasn't been someone like myself doing the things that I'm doing, basically. I feel like if I would see somebody doing the work already, then I think I'd be doing something else. I'm not sure. But I think that there's this calling to me with representation, I guess. Being like a trans femme, trans faggot, like taking up space and owning it and just doing weird shit. Just like I don't think we see like brown people doing weird shit, which is just very basic. It's basic to just be like, oh, they're doing something weird, but like actually it's just like not, you don't see it. And so I think that a lot of that drives my work. And I think once people see it, other queer people will be like, oh, they're kind of like me, or I see myself in them. There's this Native American saying, it's en Lakesh, and it's like, you are my other me. It's like a whole symbol. I don't know. I don't have it right now, but there's that symbiosis happening and also like a mirror reflection type situation. But yes, I love everyone's work, and that's why
I think that's deep. I think, can I say something?
Yeah.
No, I just think that's deep because it kind of creates a different way of thinking of ourselves. If we're thinking of ourselves, well, with that Lakesh quote and how you're approaching your work, it's like you're thinking of, I use the word intersubjectivity. Like, I don't want to get too abstract, but like the idea that we're connected, like we're not just individual, discrete, separated. That's what the world wants to make us. Like, we're all like separate in our little cells, but it's like, no, we're actually connected with each other and we're actually informing each other and shaping each other. So I think that's a radical thing in itself. So
thank you. Okay, so our last question. Do you think art, photography, videography, and or music can positively impact depression, anxiety, and or trauma? If yes, please describe why and any recommendations for therapists to include art, dance, and or music in LGBTQ by POC clients' treatment. BB, would you be able to lead us into this question?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes, I do think art has the potential and the power to, impact what someone is going through. I'm not gonna say that it's not gonna like 100% solve everything, but it's definitely a channel. and it's a way to get something out of you. It's like it could, and sometimes it starts from like a journal, you know, like a free write or something. And that could be, sometimes I feel like people take their therapy notes or whoever they're talking to, whatever they're thinking about the moment, they're journaling, they're writing something down, and they turn it into something later on. And we really just need that channel of expression to do that. Because I mean, I didn't know that I wanted to be a drag queen, like growing up. I was actually like turned off to the idea because of just like internalized transphobia and like shit from my dad. So I put that part of myself away for so long. And it was through drag that I was able to open up and be like, hey, I'm actually trans too. I was just like denying it this whole time. And even in the beginning of like my drag career, I was like so fixated on looking completely different than what I did. And I never even thought about it. But it wasn't until like a couple years later where, you know, you get better at makeup. You build, you get, you know, you improve, you grow. So yeah, it wasn't until a few years after, you know, through my practice, through my craft, I was able to be like, hey, like, why am I trying to like do something like this when I'm really like this? So we just really need the, you know, the access, the opportunity to be able to explore that. So like I said, the simple answer to this question is yes, it definitely does, you know, positively impact, address depression, anxiety, trauma in the past. It's a chance for us to kind of like what Kumi was saying. It's like imagining like our community, being able to imagine like a community for ourselves and being able to like reimagine that. And I think that's kind of what art is being able to create the person that you need to be and the person that your younger self may have needed. And I was thinking about that too. And a little bit like going back to the last question, like I always think about how our art is going to impact the future generations too. Like what future queer people, queer youth in the future, whatever, will come back and like look at our art and see like listen to our DJ sets, like look up our performances for like a school project or something. Go back in the archives for the photography, like whatever it is. I always think about who's gonna see our art in the future and like what are they gonna think, like the historians and stuff. Yeah.
Very quickly, I think you might have done it already, but a recommendation for how they can integrate art or in like therapy treatment.
Well, I mean, so I'm a big believer in the free write, because when you just write and you're just journaling so when you're just journaling, writing, whatever comes to your mind, I think that's where like a lot of creative activity could start. Like I got into like writing lyrics from journaling because you're taking excerpts. You're like, you know, you go back, read what you wrote because you're just like, then you go back, look at it, be like, okay, what does this excerpt mean? Like I wrote this, that's really interesting. Can I like put that over here? Yeah, I feel like it just starts with that first step a lot of times.
Okay, cool. BB, do you want to?
And you know what? I would love to hear from there's so many beautiful people to choose from. I would love to hear from Kumi about this.
Sorry, I was muted. Oh, I was gonna say Deco should go, but I'm like looking at the question. Yeah, I think I agree with everything that was suggested and thought about. I think it's beautiful and powerful, Phoebe, that you were able, like through art, it brought you to a place of more being affirmed in your identity. I think that's powerful. So I think, again, this is a reminder, which has been coming up in this conversation, like more people need to have art and creative expression in their lives, just on a daily. I really love the free write thing. I wrote The Artist's Way because that's like a book that talks about that. Do you know it? I don't know if you know it, BB.
I don't, but thank
Same
you.
thing, free write. They tell you about free writing as a way of opening up your creativity. So the question was, please describe why and any recommendations for therapists to include it in their treatment. Yeah, yeah, I have to think about this because like I used to be in the mental health field and like I had some things to say about that. But I also don't know if that's part of this conversation, but I think that it's important. I think art could bring a lot to like the mental health field and like social work fields. I think the therapists need to be doing the art too. Like I think like everyone needs to be opened up by a creative practice. So time needs to be allotted, I don't know, something for even like the workers to be involved in that, because in my experience, that work can be very draining. It's easy to get just overwhelmed. Like when you're helping people in a certain context, like it can be really draining. I also think that there needs to be less bureaucracy in these fields. And like, that's my critique. And hopefully that's something that y'all could take, is like less paperwork, like more being with the clients or being with the people you're trying to serve and having real connections. I know unfortunately with capital, like that's how it works. Like you have to do paperwork and have billable hours and all this shit. But yeah, oftentimes those forms of labor overtake everything. And then it becomes less about you even being able to be present with your clients, the people you're trying to help. So anyways, yeah, I think the creative piece, the art piece can be helpful for everyone, both the clients, quote unquote, like the people that are being served and the people, like maybe we're all the clients, maybe the workers are the clients, you know, it's like, maybe we're all trying to work through a certain level of mental stress due to the way society is and the way that we have to work. So
I love that. I love that perspective because yeah, it seems like as if there's always a hierarchy and a power dynamic within therapy and subject, I guess, or whatever. So,
right, exactly. How you disrupt that?
Yeah, like, can we both be drawing? Can it just not just be me?
Right, exactly.
Diko, did you have?
Yeah, at first when I read this question, I just thought about how like maybe some art, because I was thinking about in terms of like consuming art, and I'm like, there's definitely been art that like made me depressed and more anxious in the past. So it really depends on like what, because you know, art is like, it's like life. Like there's like, it's not just all like sunshine and rainbow, and a lot of the time art can be really challenging and dark and like it's real. But I think in terms of like, so in terms of consuming, I'm like, maybe it depends, but for like expressing, I think yes, absolutely. I think art is so healing. I think that a lot of people, at least for me personally speaking, like there are times when I have spoken to people where they think that like they hear that, oh, you're an artist, like that's so intimidating. They think that like only like certain people do art, or like, you know, like they think that it's only like art has to be like in a museum, or like it has to be some type of like really conceptual, or like I don't know, something really groundbreaking or whatever, when art is really not. Like art is can be as simple as like humming like a hymn, or like just singing badly, or doodling, or like it can be anything. It's about like just getting what's inside out, you know. And I think that that's is the goal. It's like the process of like, it's about not bottling things in. And I see that parallel with like therapy. Like I've been in therapy since I was 23, and I think a lot of that process is just about like showing up and just like feeling those things and letting it out and acknowledging them and being like, okay, they're there, they're real. Like I'm still an icon, regardless I feel those things or not. And it's the same with art. I think it's like, just make something, just, you know, do something that you love and something that makes you feel something, feel good, and just express it. Just come out with it. And I think that that's what I have to say about that within therapy, I guess, if that is applicable.
Circling back the question to my work and myself, I was born a mover, a performer, I guess, a dancer. I personally identify as a mover because everyone moves and we're all movers. And dance kind of has this kind of popular idea that dancers do ballet and they do the splits and they do pirouettes, and I personally don't believe in that. I believe we're all movers, and I believe we can all feel really great. Like, and so with my work, I am a mover because I think that I am depressed. I'm not sure. I think I dance and I move, and I acquired a practice, a sophisticated kind of like dance practice in modern dance and Gaga, and essentially at some point breaking away from that because I was depressed and I didn't know how to like I feel like moving really helped me get out of my head. So if I were to recommend anything, it'd be just like, I don't know, like dancing and getting into a class. And it's hard. It's like, I guess this is the problem that dance has, is that it has a power dynamic and a hierarchy. And within even our dance classes, I myself feel very like, oh, they're like, oh, they're that, you know, it's like very crazy. There's this practice called Gaga movement, which basically anyone can do, which I love. And you just start from like the leader telling you kind of in a very poetic and visually very stimulating way how to move your body. So it'll be like, move your hand like seaweed. And, you know, there's multiple ways of interpreting that. You know, you can just, and it doesn't have to be anything really. It's literally however you want to move like seaweed. Like, so I think in that way, like dance can really help depression. You start developing a relationship with your body and how to move it and communicate with it very, perhaps in a very low stakes, I guess, way, which is why I'm talking about Gaga movement, because Gaga movement is the only practice that I feel has this openness where like everyone can do it, disabled people can do it, yeah, anyone that wants to do it, any body can do it. So anyways, that would be my recommendation, Gaga movement. Encouraging people to have a connection with their body, and get out of their head, perhaps, or get the ideas out through the body, through movement. And so I think that's all of our questions. And I think now I think there's a Q&A, I think now.
There is. First, I want to thank all four of you for coming and sharing this deeply personal thoughts, experiences, ideas. I learned a lot being here, and I'm grateful for it. And I do want to open up to the other participants and see what you guys have to ask. What would you like to learn from these four folks? I see we've got one question about how you address self-judgment when creating art. Is that something one of you would like to start with? How do you keep that sort of critical edge of self-judgment? Like what, you know, I think it got referenced a few times, like, oh, people think I'm not really an artist. I'm not good enough to be an artist. I can't call myself an artist. And that seems like all four of you have found ways to be really centered in your art and really embrace the idea of self as artists. So are there strategies that you could recommend to other people to move over that hump?
Like, sorry, Sebastian.
No, go ahead.
I feel like it's an everyday struggle. It's not something I am past. I think it's like Things like, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome, and just self-doubt. I think that's something that's an everyday thing to work through for me. I do a lot of daily meditation. I also I run like 3 or 4 times a week, like just to remind myself of my body. So like there's like a lot of like spiritual grounding that I have to do in order to do spiritual and physical grounding in order to do the art that I do. But even then, it can be a challenge. Also, I think one thing that I found is like doing inner child work. So kind of like treating myself as a kid and trying to really take care of myself, like when I'm scared, when I'm like just trying to have that part of me that's like, it's gonna be okay, Kubi, like showing myself love and being really gentle with myself. I think it's kind of like that practice starts with you and then it can really radiate out in your relationships to other people too, which is a beautiful thing about it. But I think it's a daily thing and I think a lot of us experience that. So I think being able to admit that and sit with it and be gentle as it arises.
Yeah. Sebastian, I think you had some thoughts about that as well.
Very quickly, I've been working with this thing with my therapist for a while now, which is like these voices in my head that are like negative voices that tell me that I'm like being a bitch. Or that like my work is not where it needs to be and things like that. And so I just remind myself that it's like a putting myself down thing, and acknowledging that this is what I'm doing helps a lot. I think a lot of confusion as artists comes from not knowing our patterns and where these things are coming from. And so I'm starting to learn how to filter out non-constructive criticism or criticism that just being more selective and being careful of the way that like things come into my consciousness and how not to let those things get the best of me. And yeah, I love what Kumi said about treating yourself like a child. I don't know if that's what you meant, Kumi, but it is.
Kind of, yeah, like taking care of yourself as if you were a child.
Yeah, I think yeah, it just makes sense to me. Like, oh yeah, like there's the grown-up Sebastian, and then there's like the grown-up Sebastian that wants to not be an adult, perhaps, but they need to be cradled inside. I don't know. So that makes a lot of sense to me as well. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Tico, did you have something?
Yeah, I think about how like, yeah, I agree with Kumi and Sebastian. I think that that's like kind of part of like being alive, you know, and maybe especially with artists where, you know, we can be kind of like, at least for me, I can definitely be like a perfectionist as time. And like it is, and when we're creating art, and I think it's a lot about being vulnerable and showing parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily, you know, show every day. But and that's a lot of like, we have to face a lot of those, I don't want to say demons, but that's the word that came out. But and I think a lot about like, it's totally about being gentle. And like I love reminding myself that it's like, you know what, like before I made that art and before anything, like I'm whole and complete and I'm amazing regardless. So like, and I also love to think about like, it's very much like affirmation type thing that I tell myself, and it really helps, and just being nice to myself in that way. And I also think about like in ways, this might sound a bit like vain, but like I think about in ways I have like thought like just like when I look at pictures of myself that have just been taken, I'm a photographer, so that goes with hand in hand, where I'm just like, oh my God, like I would be like pointing out flaws in the way I look or just whatever it is, you know, and I feel like we can all be our biggest critics. And then I think about like, you know, a few years later, I look at that same image, I'm just like, wait, I was like so beautiful and like so gorgeous. And I just try to like put that mindset back into like today. I'm just like, no, like we're all looking at ourselves through these lens that is like actually not true necessarily. And like we are like, you know, amazing regardless. And I think that we all have those experiences, and just thinking about that, applying that to like the present day helps me personally.
I think ending on the statement of we are all amazing is pretty perfect. I want to thank all of our panelists. You are all amazing. I can't wait to Google your work. I want to thank the participants and the moderators. And I also want to beg you as sweetly as possible to fill out the evaluation form that is going to be dropped into the chat box. So like I said at the beginning, we do get funding from the state of California, and that's why we're able to put on these events without charging anybody any money, and also honoring the time that our panelists put into it. So the only way that we can, you know, sort of like make the case for why we're doing something that's important is when we're able to show that people came, people engaged, people had good things to say. So we are trying to end all of these sessions a little bit early so that we honor the time commitment of until 2:30. So in the 4 minutes that you have back in your day, I do hope that you can all just take a couple of them and fill out that event form.
Taylor, very quickly, BB, I'm not sure if you wanted to very quickly say one last word.
Oh, okay, for sure. Okay, so I think y'all did an amazing job of, you know, really getting our thoughts all together. And I think I'm gonna just summarize all that by just saying it's okay to be corny. It's okay to be a little corny. I think that was my big thing, especially because we're always functioning with this lens of like capitalism and social media. It sometimes feels like I gotta produce content. I hate that. I hate calling art like our art content. Anyways, it's okay to be corny, and it's really hard not to be self-judgmental. But I think more so it's just like self-awareness a lot of times. But you know, like I feel like a lot of people stop themselves because they're like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do this. This is stupid. Like, this is too dumb." It's okay. Like explore that shit. Let yourself be dumb a little bit, and yeah, it's okay to be corny. Workshop it.
Thank you.
I love that. I am never going to use corny as a mean thing to myself ever again. Lean into the corny.
Love the corny.
You love corny.
Yeah.
Corny 2021.
Period.
So Sebastian, do you have any sort of closing words of wisdom for us? I've put in my plug for the evaluation form, and again, I want to express my appreciation to all of you who showed up and shared.
No, I mean, yes, I guess. Thank you to Diko, to BB, to Kumi for taking some time out of their beautiful days to be here and let our voices be heard. And I hope that like this gave everyone that came to this panel as much insight as you could into some of our experiences that are just really precious. I think our lives as queer people of color are precious. Every day we deal with the struggle of surviving, and we're precious, period, point blank. And thank you guys so much. And that's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you all
everyone.
for being here.
Thank you so much.